So the LAs do a lot of different things in our class. So I described earlier on that, we have groups of 3 to 6 and everybody's job is to float around, and that is true for a large majority of the class. But one of the things that, or a couple of things that happen in our classrooms that are slightly different that LAs are critical for also. This is a studio class. And so the studio class means that we have these investigations that we do that are pre them learning about the content, right? So it's they are developing models for physics, think like momentum conservation, right? They're trying to figure those things out. And so one of the things that the LAs have to do is they have to feel confident enough in their physics content knowledge to listen to someone's design for an experiment, give feedback, and redirect it to a place that will actually get data. And I have experienced so many times in other classroom spaces where LAs don't feel comfortable doing that, and it's a train wreck then for the actual getting anything out of a lab. And so our LAs feeling like they know, I guess what we usually do for prepping them, or what we try to do, we're not always very good about it, but what we try to do for prepping the LAs to be ready for this kind of thing is we try to give them, here are 3 good experiments to have in the back of your head. So if a student wants to investigate directionality, or if a student wants to investigate mass, like here are some things that you want to make sure that they think about in designing that experiment. But we also give them freedom to say, if somebody has a cool idea and you think it'll work, go for it, right? And then also, because the instructor is in the room, they also have the ability to say, hey, Vashti, I don't actually know if this one will work. Can you come over here and listen to their idea and see if it'll work? But so this idea of like listening and redirecting for a lab investigation, I think is a really important role that the LAs play. I have more, but maybe I'll see.
Another way we use LAs in the classroom is to help run we call split whiteboard meetings. So we're in an awkward classroom space that's kind of has a weird aspect ratio, and so it isn't convenient to kind of bring everyone together in the center. So what we often do is split the room in half and then run 2 simultaneous whiteboard meetings. Usually students have been working through a worksheet, or what we call an in-class activity, and so they might get through about half, and then we'll do a whiteboard meeting, and then the point of the whiteboard meeting is that students are able to share answers to different questions, so different groups might be assigned different numbers, and then that later on you should pay attention to these whiteboard meetings because that is your chance to answer any questions you may have about this activity, which will be due for homework the next time around. And so when LAs kind of run these whiteboard meetings, it is a chance for them to watch students present their solution, and then to kind of prompt that group to ask questions or to ask questions themselves, and to kind of probe whether all that conceptual understanding has been kind of, I guess, juiced out of that problem. And I think that's one of those places where I think students are often scared to try for the first time. But after they've run it for a couple of times, it's just, they're just running their own classroom in a half the classroom space. And the instructor, their role is to kind of float from one meeting to the other to kind of see if things are being missed or, probe some extra those. But yeah, we've had some great success with students kind of leading that part of the class.
So I think the split whiteboard meetings, those happen because I have LAs. They couldn't happen without LAs. That's an important thing. The other piece I think is what Abhilash was hinting at. So the whiteboards, I borrow a lot from modeling instruction as a curriculum design, and one of the key features of modeling instruction is getting people to pull out rules and patterns that they see from either laboratory investigations that they did, or even you'll have them do 4 or 5 structured problems that are designed to help them see equipotential lines or something like that. And so they have to pull out these rules, is how we refer to them, pull them out. And the way we have them pull them out is we have them make these whiteboards on big 2-foot by 3-foot whiteboards as a group. And so they're supposed to, here's my rule and here's my evidence for my rule. And so one of the other key things that LAs do in the classroom is they're floating around and they're reading whiteboards and they're helping students make them better, right? So they're helping them rewrite those rules so that they're more consistent, or maybe, there's a couple of rules that need to be smashed together to make a more generalizable thing. And they're also doing things, I've heard Polo do it so many times, practicing saying what your experiment was. And so this is a thing that, as a science skill, right? It's a good science skill to say, like, here's what I investigated, here's how I did it, and here was my result. And it turns out students are not very good at doing that. They need help learning. And what I hear my LAs doing all the time is when they put those whiteboards together, they're saying, what was your experiment? Can you say it in one sentence? One sentence, because a whiteboard is not very big, so you have to say it in one sentence. And so helping them structure those whiteboards so that they're useful for the conversation and they have the right stuff on them is another key role, because I can't do it all, right? As an instructor, I can't get to all of those groups before we need to be having a whiteboard meeting. And so having the LAs feeling like they're checking off, like, okay, these are the key things. And sometimes I'll even pull them up front pull them aside in the middle of the class and be like, oh, I haven't seen this particular idea. Have any of you seen it on a whiteboard? Because I have a checklist that I'm checking to make sure everything's in the room. And so my LAs become sort of a intermediate for me to say, like, oh yeah, so-and-so's group has this, or when we're actually doing the whiteboard discussion, the LAs are the people who are like, oh, I think so-and-so had something to add to that, and they're calling out the students to share stuff.
And one thing I think I've seen the LAs do in our classroom that isn't such a formal structure, but I think it's in the spirit of what we call bliss and what it means to teach bliss, is attending to students' affect. And I think I've seen several LAs be really good about noticing when students are getting frustrated and then saying, and doing the things to, slow it down, step back and say, no, it's not a problem, because doing physics in a classroom or a lab setting and you have a clock to beat, or you feel that you need to get good data, or all these stressful things. And so I think the LAs I've seen over and over attend to students' affect and make sure that they're calm. And I've seen from interviews of our students that certain LAs are called because they know they're going to be a calming influence, and that they know they're going to be a positive support for them. So.
And that goes back to the experience thing too. Our LAs are able to say, like, I remember when I was doing this and it was super frustrating. That first coding activity, oh, it was so hard, but you're going to get it done, right? Like, just calm down, you're going to get it done. And that their ability to say that from an experienced student perspective far outweighs my ability to say that as an instructor.